Hi everybody and welcome to our Apprenticeship Service webinar. Today we're going to be looking at how to recruit an apprentice using the Apprenticeship Service. And our session today is for both training providers and for employers. My name's Nick Duff from the Service Engagement team and I'll be hosting today. As we start, can I do my usual reminder and just let you know that this webinar is being recorded, and can I remind you that by registering and attending today, you're giving your consent and you're agreeing for the webinar to be recorded and also to be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. So if you feel that you've changed your mind regarding consent, can I ask that you please dial off? As for the recording itself, I'll tell you how you can access these a little bit later on. I'll also let you know a little later on how to access a handout from today's session. And what we're going to do on the handout is we're going to put all of the key links that we'll be referring to during the main input, so that you can download a copy of that so you don't have to make notes of the links. So hopefully you'll all notice that you've automatically been placed on mute, and you'll stay on mute throughout the webinar. We're expecting today's session to be around or to last around 90 minutes. We've got two Q&A sessions today, and we'll hold one Q&A session after each of the demos that we have for you. And what we'll do in those Q&A sessions, we'll try and cover all of the main points that you raise with your questions, even if we don't get around to answering each individual question specifically. And then what we will do with the questions, whether we answer them or not, we will share all of those questions with the dev team and with our user research colleagues so that they can take account of any of your thoughts or views in the continued development of the service. So if you've got a question for us, if you want to ask us a question, find your control panel, and on the control panel, look for the heading called questions. If you click on that, you can pop your question in there, and then we'll see that and we'll get around to them during those Q&A sessions. Can I also remind you that at the end of today's session, as you leave the webinar, you'll be directed to a really quick short survey. I'd like it if you don't mind, if you can go on, share your thoughts about what you thought about today's webinar. So just take a couple of moments to answer a few quick questions and give us your feedback. So for today, I'm joined by Jane Farrington, Chris Lightfoot. They're both from the team that worked on both the recruit and apprentice journey and also the new and improved find an apprentice journey as well. Also joined by Tina Croydon from our apprenticeship support team. These are the guys that are delivering the main input for today's session. And then I've also got Sabina Pasaniuk from the apprenticeship operations team, who will be joining us for the Q&A session as well. So the plan is that we're going to give you a reminder about how we use the Apprenticeship Service to create and manage apprenticeship adverts. And then we'll share some hints and tips about how you get your apprenticeship vacancies quickly through our quality assurance process. Then we'll have our first Q&A session, and then we'll move on to show you how potential apprentices can view your vacancies, so how they see your vacancies and how they apply for their vacancies in Find an Apprenticeship. And then we'll wrap up the main input with a second Q&A session. So welcome to everybody. Welcome to all my presenters. I think we're ready to get going. So up first, I think we've got Jane. So Jane, are you ready? I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thanks, Nick. And Nick's welcomed everybody. So I will start to share my screen, and then I'm going to be the person that's going to talk you through how to place an advert on our recruit and apprenticeship service. I just wanted to say, before I start, we did release the new Find an Apprenticeship earlier in July, and so there have been a few changes to the recruit side for employers and providers, but not a massive amount of changes. Some content and some updates that we have done to enable the adverts for our apprentices to be viewed correctly. And just to give you some figures, since we released the new Find an Apprenticeship service, we've had 20,000 people, potential apprentices, create accounts with us in the last month. And we have had 101,000 applications in July. So it is a great service. I know there are some teething problems, but young people and other people are looking for apprentices and apprenticeships and are using our service. So please go on and place your adverts with us, and I'll hopefully be able to show you how easy that is. Now, I know that there have been some problems in the past week around timeout errors, and I know that people are going to have concerns about that. That is already being addressed. We have got developers working on it, and some releases have gone out. So if you've seen some timeout errors, they could have already been improved, but we are still working on it. So without any further delay, I will talk us through how to apply for an apprenticeship advert on our service. So I'm going to go through the employer account, not the provider account. And this is fake data, so you are all right to see it. And on the home page of your employer account, you will see this area, which is your apprenticeship adverts. So if we want to go through to that area, we can create an advert. Okay. And what we're going to do is talk you through creating an advert. So this part of the service is what we call a task list, and it gives you the view of everything needed to create the advert, and it will make you go through in the order that is needed for your advert. So you can't select any area of the service until you've filled in the start of an advert summary. All adverts must have the word apprenticeship in them. And to save time today, because it is quite a long service, I will just be adding in content that's on the page. So this will not look like a complete advert. So the next thing that you're going to see is what training course will the apprentice take? Now, if you start to type in this box, it will give you an option for a standard that you're going to want to use. And then you'll be able to select, and we will play back the standard that you've selected, and it will give you the option to confirm or to cancel or to change. So we've confirmed that, and then you will need to enter the name of the training provider or the UK PRN of a training provider that you want to use. There is some help here. What is a UK PRN number, and a link that will take you off to a different area. So we're confirming the training provider we're using today, and then we're going to ask employers for a summary of their apprenticeship. So this could be what you're offering and what your applicant should, why your applicant should apply, and it must be at least 50 characters. So what I will do is input this information, and then we can continue. What will the apprentice do at work? Now, this is to list the tasks an apprentice will do on a normal working day, and this area must be in bullet points. So if I were to enter the points, you'll see it carries on bullets for you, and it will help your advert look correct when an apprentice sees it on Find an Apprenticeship. So next we get to how will the apprentice train, and the apprentice training schedule. Now, if you've agreed this, you can put information in. If not, there will be a content that is displayed on the advert that says that the training schedule has not yet been agreed. That will automatically be input if you don't fill anything into this section. And then you can also add in additional information about the training if you require in this next box. Now you're taken back to the task list, and you'll see that the first area of the task list has been completed, and it will let you know that the rest hasn't been started. These areas of the task list can be changed once you've completed the entire task list. We can go back and edit any area at all. So we're going to go on to closing and start dates. So your application closing date must be 2 weeks after your start date. So we're going to say that the closing date is going to be in December this year, and the apprentice will be starting maybe next year. And then you need to input the amount of hours that the apprentice will have to work. Now, normally we're giving you some hint text above here. For a baker, a typical length is 18 months. So because I selected the standard that was a baker, we're giving you some information there that will say that that standard normally lasts for 18 months. You can put details of your working week into the box below, and you can say how many hours the apprentice is likely to have to work. Now, there has been some changes here that people may not have seen on how much will the apprentice be paid. You can set the wage yourself, but it must be more than the national minimum wage for an apprentice. You can select national minimum, or you can select a competitive salary, which will not show the salary, but it will affect how it's displayed on an advert in Find an Apprenticeship. So for this, we're going to select national minimum wage. Then we're taken through extra information about pay and benefits. Now, both of these are optional boxes, so you don't need to complete them. But if you want your advert to stand out, then you'll need to put some additional information into these areas for apprentices to see. Then it's how many positions do we have for this apprenticeship and where will they be working. Now you can select the different areas that you have as an employer. You would have different locations, or you can add a new location. Now you'll see that I'm at the second area completed on the task list, and now I'm moving on to requirements and prospects. So we can tick the boxes that we would like the apprentice to have, or you can add in any desired skill that you would like. And this is an area that you may not have seen if you haven't looked at RAA lately, but the qualifications area has been updated to say, do you want to add qualifications? So we used to force you to add a qualification. Now you can select no. If you want to select, if I select no and continue, then I move on to the next page. If I want to go back and select yes, then you'll see that we have a drop down that you can select which qualification you want to add, the subject you would like to add, and the grade. So you can select a number or a letter. And that update has gone in since we've released the new Find an Apprenticeship, and it can be essential or desirable. It will play back the qualifications that you have input, and you can add another qualification or you can continue. And then we'll see what is the expected career progression after this apprenticeship. And this isn't an optional box, so you will need to complete this area. Where you see here apprenticeship, that's because I put that as the title of this apprenticeship. But if I'd put the correct title for the job advert, that would be displaying here in this area. Then we move on to what else would you like the applicant to consider? And this is an optional area that you can complete, but if it did involve working outdoors and lifting heavy objects, you could input that into this box. Then we've got 3 areas complete, and we're moving on to about the employer. It's highlighted, so it will take you through the name of the employer that you want to add, any information about the organisation that you want to add in, the website, and whether or not you're a disability confident employer. And that will display on your advert and be filterable for people looking for disability confident employers. You can add contact details, so the contact name the contact email and the contact number. That's for anyone that an applicant would like to talk to about the vacancy. And how would you like to receive your applications? Through the Find an Apprenticeship website or through a different website? And the website would be your own website, and you would apply and put the link and explain the application process. But for this purpose, we're going to go through the Find an Apprenticeship website. You'll see now that we have completed 4 sections, and this new area of the advert where we can ask additional questions to potential apprentices. Now, you can ask anything you like. You can ask 1 question or 2, and they will display on the advert when it goes through to Find an Apprenticeship. They are optional. You can leave them out if you don't want to. And you must make sure they have question marks, or else they will fail the validation. So we've looked at all those areas through the recruit. Now we can check our answers, and this will play back all the answers that you have input into your advert. And at any point, you can go back and change the title. You could make it a bakery or apprenticeship, and so everything would look more in line. So we can change any area of those details. We can even change the start date, and it will take you forward and backward through from the task list back to this page where you can check all your answers. Now, before you submit your advert, we have got this information on the page that would ask you to preview your advert before submitting. This will give you a full view of how your advert is going to look on Find an Apprenticeship. Now, at the moment, this is still in development, so this preview is not exactly as you will see. It will be released in the next few days, but this, when you go to apply and place your advert, I do suggest that you look at your preview and see exactly what an apprentice will see and how they will view your advert and whether you can make any changes before submitting. But if you're happy with everything there, then you submit your advert and you'll get an approval to say that your advert's gone through for approval, and you'll get a vacancy reference number. Your advert should be approved within 24 hours, and that will go through to our quality assurance team. And I believe that we have Tina who is going to talk us through that once we've finished. So I'm just going to hand back to Nick, I think, and that's the end of the recruit demonstration.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Jane. Yeah, you're right. We're handing over to Tina in a second once we've got control back of the screen. A really useful update. We've got some questions obviously coming for you, Jane, that we'll address in the Q&A. So if you could start having a look at those and prepare your answers, that'll be really cool. Okay, so we're on to Tina's screen. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to my colleague Tina Croydon, who's going to be taking us through some of the hints and tips for the quality assurance process for your vacancies.
Thank you very much, Nick. Hi everyone, my name is Tina Croydon. I am one of the support managers in the Apprenticeship Service and I look after our vacancies team. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the quality assurance process itself. So first of all, some benefits there outlined about the Recruit and Apprentice platform. Recruit is a great free government service that allows you to have end-to-end management of your vacancies. If you ever need any support using the platform, you can always contact us. There's always somebody on the end of a phone that you can get some support from. We're here 8 AM till 8 PM Monday to Friday. You can also contact the team via web chat if you prefer to do that. So we've seen a brilliant demonstration from Jane of the Recruit and Apprentice platform. We know this service has huge demand. Jane talked us through some of those numbers earlier, and so we know lots and lots of apprentices are using Find an Apprenticeship. Even before the service was upgraded, we listened to your feedback and worked tirelessly with our quality assurance team in order to make sure that the quality assurance process is as user-friendly as it possibly can be. If you had stopped using the RAA for any reason, we would encourage you to come back and give us another try. Your organisation could be missing the opportunity to reach a wider apprentice audience and increase your talent pool. There's absolutely nothing stopping you from using RAA along with another recruitment platform. We always welcome feedback from you as well. So if your organisation would like to participate in some user research, to talk to us about your experience of RAA or anything else about the service really, we would welcome this. All you need to do is contact our support team and we can get one of our lovely user researchers to get in touch with you to organise that. So on the next slide then, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some hints and tips about how you can actually make that advert as clear as possible. So we're constantly looking to improve our quality assurance process. It's always helpful for you to proofread your own vacancy, checking any spelling and grammatical issues, and just really check that you are happy with it before you submit. Referral rates had come down month on month, and in June this year we had our lowest ever referral rate at 3%. So this means that only 3% of vacancies were sent back to the end user to amend. With the system upgrade, we anticipate that this will further reduce, meaning that 99% of all vacancies could be made live without a referral. This means that only 1% will be sent back to the end user before we can make it live. We introduced a process whereby if a vacancy does need to be referred for any reason, one of our advisors will call you. If you're happy to receive that call, we would really encourage you to include a telephone number when you submit. Where we do not have a telephone number, we will send an email, and in that email will be some very specific instructions about what needs to be done on that vacancy before it can be made live. We've made some fields of the assurance process editable for the advisors. This means that they can correct any obvious spelling and grammar issues themselves and not refer the vacancy. After that, the vacancy will only then be referred if there is some other issue identified. And so on the next slide then are just some helpful tips for you to really understand what it is that makes an advert appealing to an apprentice. We do lots and lots of user research around this, and I think it would be really good for you to hear it really. So what makes an advert appealing? User research tells us that apprentices need to have the expectations and commitments set clearly at the time of applying and have a real clear overview of what training and work will look like on a daily and weekly basis. That can be really helpful to them. Without this, they have unclear expectations and are more likely to withdraw from the apprenticeship. Over the last 18 months, the team have conducted 20 rounds of research and spoken to over 200 users in total. The research looked at the end-to-end process of searching and applying for an apprenticeship. Prioritising high-level information such as wages, hours, training course and positions enables the apprentice to make an informed decision. Try to set clear expectations, so a really great summary of what the actual job is going to be, what the training will look like, and all of the requirements about the company, what to expect after the apprenticeship as well. You know, there are some really good fields that you can kind of take advantage of and really bump up the advert. Try to provide a means for the apprentices to check their travel to work time if you can. Commuting is a real major factor in the apprentices' decision making. So by breaking down the meaning of the levels and the equivalents will allow the apprentices to have more confidence in choosing the right course for them. And that's really it. So thank you very much for listening to me today. I may have spoken to many of you over the phone. I've worked in our support team for nearly 5 years now, but if anybody does want to learn more about the quality assurance process, you can always get in touch with our support team. So I believe I'm now handing back to you, Nick.
Hello, I think Nick's having some audio difficulties, so sorry everybody. Right, so if we jump to the first question, Sabina, you're available. The question is, are all employers having difficulties in logging onto the apprenticeship service? We've been getting a 504 fault code for the last 2 weeks.
Hi there, hopefully you can hear me. Yes, we do know about the 504 errors. It's a known issue in the service that we are working to address. I want to add that this is intermittent, so we know users have found success trying again a few times. I know that's not ideal, but like I said, we are working to address the issues, and I would encourage you to raise a ticket with our support team because this gives us a better view of how it's impacting our users and allows us to prioritize fixes in a timely manner. As you know, we're a big complex service. We deal with many other aspects to do with apprentices, employers, training providers, so we do have to prioritize these fixes accordingly. So I just encourage you to raise a ticket to our support team, and we will get back to you. That's also one way to find out what's happening with the issue, because we will update these tickets. Thank you.
Fab stuff. Thanks, Sabina. Whilst you're on, I've got another one for you. Can the closing day be longer? Why 2 weeks?
It can absolutely be longer. The 2 weeks is a minimum as far as I understand. Please correct me if I'm wrong, everyone. But it's best practice to allow the prospective apprentices to review that apprenticeship and prepare an application. But yes, it can be longer. And this is informed by, of course, user research. So yeah, it can be longer than 2 weeks.
Okay, fantastic. And now I'm coming over to Tina, one for you here. Is there an age limit to be an apprentice? And also, I've noticed on one job advert that the requirement for overseas candidates to be in England for at least 3 years. Is that correct? I know someone who relocated to England on a family visa, so he has a right to work in UK, and he wanted to apply for an apprenticeship, and I couldn't find any information on gov.uk website.
Thank you for that, Jazz. Yeah, so there is no age limit. Anybody can be an apprentice. However, the rule to be in the UK, in England, for at least 3 years does apply. I would encourage you to read the funding rules. So the last batch of funding rules we released, you'll notice that we've kind of combined. So there was a funding rules webinar last month as well. So that recording is also on YouTube. So if you haven't already listened to that, I'd encourage you to do that. But yes, there is a requirement that the apprentice has to, have the relevant visas and at least have had a UK address, an England address for the last 3 years. So if they are struggling to find an apprenticeship, they can contact our help desk. We can provide some support if they need that. But yes, that requirement is correct, but there is no age limit to be an apprentice.
Thank you, Tina. And then now one for you, Chris. I don't know if I understand the question actually. It's got training schedule, e.g. day release on a Thursday and on the job training.
Yep, so that's in reference to a section that Jane took us through, where we now ask and recruit an apprentice optionally if you can put in a training schedule. So people on this call who may have been involved in apprenticeship recruitment for a little while might know that historically there's been some pain points around making sure apprentices understand the commitment of travel and time and location before they apply. So what we've done is we've added this field that allows you to type in, this is where you need to be for your training. This is where the college is, or it's going to be online. These are the times. And yeah, so in that box, you just type in if it's day release, block release. All I would emphasize is apprentices or applicants might not know what those terms mean. So maybe just put in plain English, you have to be at this college at this time on this day. This is going to be online. You're going to have to go to a college for a week at the start of your apprenticeship. If you just explain in there in clear terms what the training commitment is, people looking at your advert are going to find that really useful.
Thanks, Chris. Right, and I think we've got Nick back. Nick, are you there?
I am back. Thank you, Jazz, for filling in for me. That's really excellent. And apologies for having to drop off. My sound disappeared. So if you don't mind, I'll pick up the rest of the questions. Hopefully I'm tracking where we are. So the next question I've got is Sabina, for you. The question about the closing date. Jane mentioned 2 weeks as a minimum. So why is it 2 weeks? Does it have to be 2 weeks? And is the 2 weeks a minimum? Can they have longer?
Hi, Nick. I do think we've answered that, but it can be longer, yes.
Okay, I apologise for that one. Let's have a look. Let's go down. Jane, I've got a question for you, if I can. If applications are being sent to training providers to a training provider's website, how can they include the vacancy reference to see which vacancy the applicant has applied for?
The training, the reference will be on the application, so the training provider will see the reference when they open their advert.
Okay, thank you. And then another question, well, a couple more questions for you, Jane, if I can. The question about the way applications come through has also changed, but no notifications been received. And for one advert, there are 2 different layout types. Can you offer any support or advice on that one?
Yeah, the 2 different layout types would have been from our first version of Find an Apprenticeship and then the second version. As adverts continue on to our new service, you will only be receiving 1. So as soon as people drop off the old version of FAA and they are only using the new version of FAA, you will just get the 1 advert and application. It's just while people are migrating across.
Okay, thank you. And there's a question about setting up adverts with a delayed release. So can you set an advert up for a point in the future? So, for example, at the end of August?
No, that functionality isn't available at the moment. So if you place an advert and it's quality assured within 24 hours, then it will go live the following day. So if you did want to place an advert for a time in the future, then you would have to wait to place that and place it when it was needed 24 hours before.
Okay, cool. And then I don't know whether you've covered this one already, but I'm going to ask it again anyway, because it probably bears repeating. If not, when you submit an advert through your Apprenticeship Service account, you go into that recruit section there, you submit your advert. Where does it get advertised? Where does it appear?
So it appears on Find an Apprenticeship. So it appears on our front end of Recruit, which we are going to demonstrate to you in a moment. But we do also have a display vacancy API, which anybody can sign up for, and they can then pull all the vacancies that we have on Find an Apprenticeship and display them on their own sites. Now, this is sometimes used by providers, local councils, anybody that wants to display vacancies can literally get a key, go into our API store and download the display vacancy API, and they will see all adverts that we hold.
Okay, can they do all the vacancies, or can they display particular vacancies as well if they want to?
They can tailor the vacancy API to however they would like to. So if they want to configure it to display only vacancies that are in a certain standard that they deliver. So if I was a provider and I only wanted to display vacancies for any standards that I would deliver in, then they could configure the API in any way.
Okay, cool. Chris, a question for you if I can. Can you save the advert part finished and then go back to it and submit once you've got all the information, or will the information be lost if you do that?
Yep, so the advert saves your progress as you go. You don't have to sit there and complete every step at once. As long as you complete, as long as the step is completed, as long as you press that green button, it's saved. When you go back into your account later, there's an extra web page called drafts and everything's saved in there. So you're not going to lose any progress while you're making this advert.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Jane, a question for you about employers gone in there, looked at the apprenticeship they want to offer, looking at sort of advertising the vacancy. How do they go and select a training provider?
Okay, so you need to select your training provider really before you place an advert. We do have a service called Find Apprenticeship Training. And on that website, it gives you the option to say the standard that you want to deliver, and it will give you all the available providers that will offer that standard. You can then select one of those providers by after doing your own due diligence and looking at their ranking and their scores, and contact them offline to see whether or not they're happy for you to place an advert with them as the training provider. So that piece of work is done offline between an employer and provider, and you need to agree with that provider that they're happy for you to place the advert under their name.
Excellent, thank you for that, Jane. Chris, a question about when you're putting the advert in, can you set it to appear within a certain radius? So the example they're saying is, if the advert's for Sunderland, can you set it within sort of 50 miles of a location postcode?
No, is the short answer. We basically ask you where the apprenticeship is, and then when we show you Find an Apprenticeship in a moment, it's up to the individual applicant how wide a net they're willing to cast when they search for apprenticeships. So we just ask you for the location, and then depending on if an apprentice is thinking about relocating, if they have a car and they can commute, they can then choose how wide an area they search.
Yeah, so the radius search through Find an Apprenticeship, when they're looking to search, they can set that parameter about how much travel they're prepared to do for a vacancy. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool. Jane, there's a question about salary figure. Does it automatically calculate based on number of hours that they input into the recruit section?
It does. It's done automatically in the back end.
Okay, and then if I can stay with you for another couple. So it says, similar to how Track and NHS jobs link, is there an increase? So this may increase the utilisation from public sector, especially from NHS organisations.
Okay, so currently we are working with the NHS, and we are displaying NHS vacancies on Find an Apprenticeship, but only on our vacancy API. So we are able to absorb NHS vacancies into our API and display them through the Display Vacancy API. So anybody that gets the key to use our Display Vacancy API and configures that and wants to show NHS vacancies, they can. We have got some work to do on our side and to make NHS vacancies appear on Find an Apprenticeship website. That is in our backlog, and we are looking at doing that within the next quarter. So anybody that goes on Find an Apprenticeship will then be able to see NHS vacancies advertised with us.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have Sabina, a question for you. Some candidates have got dates of birth displaying as 00010101. Can you offer some advice as to why that's happening?
Yep. So as you know, the reason we're doing this webinar is because we've released some changes to the Recruit an Apprentice and Find an Apprenticeship services, and with every change and every release, there are sometimes teething issues, and this was one of them. I'm happy to report that is now resolved, and for the user who raised this question, I would advise you to log back in and check that it is working for you correctly now, and if it's not, please send us a ticket via the support routes that we've already mentioned. I do believe, Nick, there will be links to contact support at the end of the webinar.
Very well, yeah. So we've got that set up as next steps and further support at the end of the webinar, so we'll give you all of those links then. Cool, Chris. A question about a request actually. So, can you provide some more information about what you mean by accessible language when you're talking about advertising a vacancy?
Yeah, so what we mean when we talk about accessible language is kind of the words you would see on sites like gov.uk. Basically, just keep the language simple so that everyone can understand it. If you look around at gov.uk, we normally say that's written in a very accessible, plain English kind of way. So if you know, just read back what you've read, check it makes sense, and if you're not sure, just try and write it in that kind of simple to understand way that gov.uk is written in.
Okay, thank you. Jane, so training provider here asking a question. So they've often used Recruit on behalf of an employer. Does the employer need to approve the vacancy advert before it goes live?
Thanks, Nick. What needs to happen is if a training provider is advertising on behalf of an employer, it is down to the employer to say whether or not they want to review the advert. There are two options. They give the provider the option to recruit without them reviewing the advert, or they give them the option to recruit and they view the advert. So it's in the employer account. They have to select permissions, and it's those two permissions that they have to select, either that yes, they do want to review, or no, they don't. If they select no, then obviously the advert will go straight through.
Cool. And then again, stay with you, Jane, if I can, for a couple more. There's a comment that one of the employers doesn't think that people are using this within their organisation, but they're keen to know how, and they want to know how they get the logins. So could you just explain how they log into their Apprenticeship Service account and then find where to go to recruit to put the adverts in?
So I would think that they're saying that they don't have an employer account at the moment within the Apprenticeship Service. So to place an advert with us and to use our recruit service, you would have to create an employer account within the Apprenticeship Service or a provider account within the Apprenticeship Service. As soon as you have that account, you will be able to log in using gov.uk one login and an email and set up your account. And once you're in your account, then there'll be a dashboard, a home page, and you will see you'll be able to manage apprentices, your adverts, your training providers. You'll be able to look for training and you'll be able to manage your finance. So there are lots of areas within the apprenticeship service, and recruit is just one of those areas, but you would need to have an apprenticeship account within our service to advertise.
Yeah, so basically they've got an account and they've got a login. It's the people who've got the login to the account that can access that part and advertise the vacancies.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Are there any plans, Jane, to customise or introduce customisation for adverts through embedding things like images or videos to make them stand out and more engaging?
We have had a look at that in our backlog. We do get that request quite often. We are a government site and people rely on the fact that we are gov.uk and they can believe an advert because of the way it looks, because we have a standard way we're working with our government departments. And so currently there are no plans to input any kind of additional videos or logos onto Find an Apprenticeship. I'm not saying there will never be, but at the moment it is not in our plan.
Okay. And then talking about that sort of the gov.uk facing point, so that gives a sort of an air of respectability to Find an Apprenticeship. There's a question here about how some sort of providers, colleges might leave vacancies live to attract people when the vacancy should no longer be left live. Is there anything we're doing to monitor that sort of thing within the service to stop that for fear of sort of losing people turning away from the site?
So previously, before we made some improvements to recruit an apprenticeship, providers were able to advertise vacancies with us without attaching an employer to that vacancy. We've made that change now, and so a vacancy cannot be live and placed on our service unless there is an employer attached to that vacancy with an actual apprenticeship available. And so that previously, before we made those improvements to recruit, providers could have adverts on that didn't have actual apprenticeships attached to them, but that is no longer the case. So every advert that you now see on our site has got actual apprenticeships attached to them with employers.
Okay, cool. And then Chris, can closing dates be extended if need be?
Yeah, so the bit in this demo that we didn't show is after what it looks like after your advert goes live. So find an apprenticeship and recruit an apprentice also include an optional part of the service where you can manage applications, get applications in and screen them. And once you're in that zone, you can extend a closing date, change your closing dates, and do some things with the advert. You can also do that if you aren't accepting applications through us. So yes, once the advert is live, you get this new part of the system and you can do things like change the closing date there.
Okay, cool. And then staying with you if I can, Chris, there's a question about, is it possible for employers to liaise with the training providers to do adverts for them? I think we've sort of covered that with the permissions, but is there anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, so I'll just add that if you are new to apprenticeships, if you're new to recruiting apprenticeships on gov.uk, we understand that the way that an apprenticeship goes live is it's quite often a bit of a collaboration between an employer and a training provider. So when you get into the part of your apprenticeship service account that's for recruitment, there's a whole menu where you can select how you want to work with your training provider, which training provider you're working on with which advert. We have an interface for sharing applications between the two parties. So you can use the system in a way that's really collaborative, and we'll guide you through that when you sign up for an account.
Okay, and then another couple for you if I can. There's a question, I'm not sure what an ATS system is, but it says, is it possible to link our website to our ATS system for applications? So I'm assuming this is the API that Jane was mentioning earlier on.
Well, if I understand this question correctly, so when you create an advert on Find an Apprenticeship, there is that question at the end where it asks how you want to accept applications. So you can choose to accept applications through gov.uk, through our question set, which I'll show you all later on this call, but you can also just put in a hyperlink to your own recruitment platform. So what that means is you can use Find an Apprenticeship to boost up the vacancies that you're advertising on your own site, and you can then push people from Find an Apprenticeship from our service into your own recruitment platforms and track them and do all the ways that you manage recruitment just using FAA as the start of the funnel.
Okay, thank you. And then another one for you, Chris. Can you pre-populate fields in the advert or use an existing advert to mirror a new advert without having to re-enter the same data, similar data?
Yep, you can do that. So once you've created your first advert, there's then a button that appears called Clone, and you can just press that clone button and you can, change the location, make any small edits that you need, and then just send it back to us to put on Find an Apprenticeship. So, yeah.
And there was a few questions just about editing content of live vacancies. So once a vacancy is live, can information in the advert be edited at all?
Not really, no. We only ask for you to be able to close the dates that a candidate can apply. So basically, if someone's already applied for your vacancy and then you decide to change the working hours or the salary, we ask you to take down the advert and then put it back up. You can use the clone tool to do that, and that's just so that everyone who's applied for the advert understands what they've applied for.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Tina, question for you. It says, when we're considering recruiting apprentices for the first time, well, no, sorry, they are considering this employer, we're considering recruiting apprentices for the first time. Can I just confirm, is it's the cost of training that's covered by the apprenticeship levy? So am I correct in thinking that the apprenticeship levy can't cover things like salary costs?
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, it's great to hear that you're wanting to take on apprentice for the first time. So the way levy works is there's two types of employers. You're either a levy paying employer or you are what we class as a non-levy employer. So if your organisation has an annual pay bill of more than £3 million, you are what's classed as a levy paying employer. And so you would pay into the apprenticeship levy. You can then use that levy to fund your apprenticeship training. If there is ever a time where there isn't enough levy to pay for an apprenticeship, you would fall into what we call government co-investment, which means that you would pay 5% towards the training and the government would then pay 95% of training. If you are a big employer, you also have the option to transfer some of your levy as well. So if you're a large employer and you're not going to use it all, you can transfer it to other smaller employers as well that might benefit from your levy. But if you're a non-levy employer, it basically works in exactly the same way, really, but you would always co-invest. So you pay a percentage towards the training, and 95% of it is covered by government funds. And yes, you are right in thinking that apprenticeship levy cannot be used to cover the cost of salaries. That levy is there to use just for the cost of training.
Right, we appear to have lost Nick again. So thanks for that, Tina. What I'm going to do now then is we'll resume the demos and we'll actually now move on to Chris, if that's okay. So if you just bear with us, Chris, are you okay to take us through the Find an Apprenticeship demo?
Yep, of course.
Thank you. All right, if you just bear with us a second, just while Chris gets his screens ready.
Yep, I'm just going to have to share my whole screen. So that's coming through. You can see the new Find an Apprenticeship.
Yeah, fantastic. Over to you then.
Thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Chris. I work with Jane. I'm a content designer, which means I'm one of the people that works on gov.uk, the words on gov.uk and how gov.uk works. And what I'm just going to show you is the new Find an Apprenticeship that went live a couple of weeks ago. So Find an Apprenticeship is a website that exists on gov.uk. It's like a job site for apprenticeships is the easiest way to think about it. And like Jane said, it's used a huge amount, 101,000 applications, I believe is what she said in July. So really, really popular service that is a great place to advertise your apprenticeships. I saw some questions on the come through about, you know, how much does this service cost? Is it free? Find an Apprenticeship, Recruit an Apprenticeship is entirely free. We don't charge you anything to use it. We don't charge anyone anything to apply through it. It's a government service. It's there for you to use. So people who have been in the game of apprenticeship recruitment for a little while will know that we have quite thoroughly redesigned this service. Find an Apprenticeship has been online for a while, and we decided it was time to upgrade it, make it a more modern government website and make it easier for use. We wanted to make it a lot more modern. We wanted to support candidates more as they went through the application process for an apprenticeship. And also we know that there were some pain points in the apprenticeship journey. For instance, again, I saw a lot of questions about location and how sometimes you have people applied for apprenticeships who maybe aren't completely aware where the apprenticeship is located. So we've looked at those problems that we know exist and tried to create a design that solves that. So just to maybe talk about how we work a little bit quickly as well, we are what's called a user-centered design team. And that is a fancy phrase, but basically what it means is there's a group of us who work on this, and we don't just sit there and create a website that we think looks good. We have someone on our team whose whole job is to research, and that means talking to apprentices, talking to training providers, and talking to employers. And what we're trying to create is a service that is useful. We went to schools, we went to colleges. You might have been part of our research before, and at the end of this demo, I'm going to plug some research we've got going on at the moment. Everyone who is mentioning things about multiple locations and nationwide searches in the question field, we would love to get your insight because those are themes we're currently looking at. So to actually talk through the service, this is the new homepage. So if you used Find an Apprenticeship before, you might recognize that what we've done is we've simplified the search experience in Find Apprenticeship a lot. Previously on the homepage, we would start asking users about what apprenticeship level they were interested in doing. We made them choose a search radius. We asked them a lot of questions before they got going. And one thing we heard particularly from training providers who really understand apprenticeships is that asking too many questions here was unhelpful. Potential apprentices would get caught up on apprenticeship levels, whereas they should be thinking about more what they want to do rather than what level qualification they're looking to achieve in some cases. So we've really taken on what training providers were saying and tried to make the design more useful and less complicated for everyone. We have also added this button. So a candidate can just type in a word here and discover what they're interested in, and they can also just type in where they live, or they can just press search and see everything we have available. But what we have added, which wasn't in Find an Apprenticeship before, is this button called Browse by Your Interests. And that is a really exploratory part of the design where users can just tick the boxes of the categories of apprenticeships that they're interested in. And what's good about this, I think, for the people on this call is, firstly, this is helpful for apprentices because they can think a little bit more about what it is they want to do. But what's good for us is it means that if you offer, say, a slightly more unusual apprenticeship course with a slightly more unusual standard, you do something that's not engineering or business, we hope that this will make it clearer what kind of apprenticeships you can do. I don't think a lot of people would think, in the search box that they could potentially do an apprenticeship in floristry, but when they get here, they might start to actually realize all the things they can do apprenticeships in. So one of the main goals we have for Find an Apprenticeship, this redesign, isn't just about making apprenticeships more popular, but making every kind of apprenticeship more popular. So whatever you're offering, we're trying to get it in front of as many people as possible. So to show you a little bit more then of how this works, I'm just going to do a search for welding. Let's say I want to do an apprenticeship in welding, and we've got some dummy data in the service just for this demo. So if things look a bit strange, it's because we're using dummy data, so we're not showing real company names. So this is the new search results screen of Find an Apprenticeship. Here, if a user knows that they have a specific apprenticeship level they're looking to achieve, they can type that in. We haven't taken away that functionality, we've just moved it. They can look at some categories, and if you're a disability confident employer, users can pick to only show disability confident vacancies. That's a really important scheme, and we're happy to have that in the service. What we've also done is we've made this really, really clear map. So there's dummy data, which is why we're showing an apprenticeship in, a lot further south than we normally offer apprenticeships. But what this means is that applicants get this massive map that shows exactly where your apprenticeship is, and they can click on it, they can see the apprenticeship. So again, we know that location is a pain point, and we're trying really hard to make it clearer to users where their apprenticeship is and what the commitment is to get there. So if I just close that map, let's look at how an advert looks on Find an Apprenticeship. So everything that Jane showed you, this is the output, this is what you get. So we have redesigned this. We know it takes a lot of effort, and people put a lot of care into the content they write for their adverts. So we wanted to make the adverts more effective and spend a little bit of time making them look better and read better. So we now have this single column, which is much more readable, but also we have this big table at the top. So when we were going into schools and sixth form colleges, talking to school leavers, we asked them, what is the most important thing about an apprenticeship? What do you look at most? Unsurprisingly, things like annual wage are important, the hours I have to work, how long it is. So we put that all right at the top, so users can very quickly see, okay, is this apprenticeship for me? The other things we've done on this page is we've tried to explain more what an apprenticeship is. We've really tried to make it clear to users how an apprenticeship fits together, so they're going into the apprenticeship that you're offering more informed. So one thing that we do is we explain, this is how an apprenticeship works. When you're at work, this is what you'll be doing. And under the training section, we explain what apprenticeship training is, because we know sometimes an apprentice starts their apprenticeship without necessarily fully understanding the split between work and training. You'll see again, I'm banging on about location a lot, but I know it's important to people on this call, is that we have this section called Where You'll Work. And if you click this button, you can type in where you live, how you can travel, and it will show you how long it takes to get there and how far you have to travel. This isn't the most particularly helpful example. I think it's from 11 Downing Street to 10 Downing Street, not a job that I have, but this is a commute tool that again just spells out to users the commitment they need to take to get to work. Other things on this page are all quite similar. So because in Recruit an Apprentice, that journey where you make an advert, we haven't changed that much. All the new fields that we added, I believe, are optional. So all your old adverts continue to work. They just get dynamically changed into the new improved design. We just put everything out, and yeah, it's the same information just presented in a nicer way. So now let's step into the application journey. So as I've mentioned, Find an Apprenticeship and Recruit an Apprenticeship, you can choose to use the application form that we've made. So if you don't have your own website recruitment platform for handling applications, we have one that you can use. We obviously think it's decent. We do some things where candidates can reuse information across different applications, so it's quick for them to fill out. It's one less account. But let's jump into it and see what it looks like. So I'm going to press this apply for apprenticeship, and I'm going to start applying for this welding apprenticeship. So like what Jane showed, we use the same idea. We use this thing called a task list, which just allows a candidate to do it in their own time, step by step, very accessible. It's gold standard government design. A lot of this is what you'd expect. So you can add your qualifications. We do let for GCSEs, we know that some, results day is obviously about to come up, but if you are still waiting for your results, you can say, well, my teacher said I'm going to get an A or a B. It's numbers now, isn't it? I think 4 is a pass, but I could be wrong on that. So let's say I'm predicted a 4. I can then go in and add all my grades. I can press save. Okay, I need to add maths as well because I've pressed that button. Let's say I'm going to also get a 4. And then you can see we handle the user's application, we handle their qualifications, and they press continue. And a lot of this works in the way you'd expect. I'm not going to show you everything how this works, but you can have a play around. We ask for training courses because some people, not every apprentice is 16 or 18. We like that apprentices can come from all walks of life, any point they want to switch careers. So we give people more space to be able to add things and experiences they might have. There are 2 bits I think are really important on this call to call out, and that's how the questions that we ask. And I want to also talk about how we handle interview adjustments. So let's talk about the application questions. When you use Find an Apprenticeship to accept applications, we ask 2 questions by default. And then when you make your advert, you can add some questions that might be really important to your specific line of work. So the 2 questions that we ask by default are, what are your skills and strengths? What interests you about this apprenticeship? So basically, what can you bring to this apprenticeship? Why do you want to do this apprenticeship? We think those are 2 really important questions. So if we open what are your skills and strengths, we help the apprentice write more, we want to support someone to write a good answer. We want to support someone to write a good answer so they have a better chance of getting the apprenticeship, and also so you're reading good answers that are helping you decide which candidate you want to pick. So what we do is that skills section that Jane showed you when you create your advert, where you can select, I'm looking for someone who has attention to detail or team working or is safety conscious. We pull that in here, we put it in front of the applicant, and we make a point, a good answer might draw on these themes. So if there's something really in particular you want candidates to reflect on, you can add it to that skills section, and we'll now put it in front of them here, and they should be able to respond to that. The other question we ask is, what interests you about this apprenticeship? And again, we pull in some data dynamically to kind of help the user write a more relevant answer. So we ask why they want to be a welder. We ask why they want to work for your company, and we'll put your company name here. And we also ask what hobbies they have that are relevant to this apprenticeship. You might remember, if you've used Find an Apprenticeship and Recruit an Apprenticeship for a little while, this used to be a standalone question, but we've decided to just incorporate it into this question. So it just felt like it made more sense. We also have a word count now of 300 words, which I think is a small decrease from the previous application form. And again, that's just to guide expectation. When users see this number, that's what they think they have to achieve. 300 words is still a lot, and this is something that we're watching, but we're just trying to make those application forms a little bit easier for everyone, easier to write and easier for you to review. So the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is how we handle interview adjustments. So we now, in this section of the application form, give users a lot more guidance and content, because It's a sensitive matter, and we want to make sure that they feel supported and that they trust us with this kind of information. So we explain what an interview adjustment is and why you might need one. For example, if you have a disability, health condition, or neurodiversity, you might want to think about an interview support request. The new bit is that we make it very clear to candidates that it's their choice when they want to discuss their interview support request. There is no requirement in law for a candidate to express that they need their interview to be supported when they make your application. They might want to do it here. They might find it easier to write it down as the application because they'd rather express it in words than over the phone. But we do emphasize to candidates that it's really their choice when they want to discuss that. They can wait until they get offered an interview and then talk about it with you themselves and not do it through our system. So the no box here, if you say you don't want a support request for interview, it now says, no, I don't need support. I'll discuss it if I get it as I'll discuss it if I get an interview. So you might find that people select no here and then talk to you about interview support requests, and that's just because we've made it clearer to them that it's really something that's in their power to disclose about themselves. So that is the application form. I don't want to show you all of it because that could be quite a long demo. Once a user has filled this out once, we save their answers, so it becomes really quick to do follow-up applications. The only thing I would emphasize is if you do handle your applications through Find an Apprenticeship, there is an option where you can make people successful and unsuccessful. So we know that a lot of apprenticeship hiring happens over the phone. You talk to them directly, you don't do it through the system, but it is really nice if you make someone, if you decide the apprenticeship's not for them, to mark them as unsuccessful and recruit an apprentice in your Apprenticeship Service account. And what we do is we just ask for some feedback. I haven't got any in this account, but we ask you to just write a little summary. Why didn't this candidate get this apprenticeship? And apprentices can be at the start of their career. Feedback is incredibly useful for them, and we send them an email to let them know that they have or haven't got the apprenticeship, and we bring your feedback in, and it just sort of closes the loop. So that's a feature that we really like, and I just want to emphasize on this call. So that is Find an Apprenticeship. I'm happy to take some questions when we move on to the QA session, and also I will be later on posting a link to some research, particularly if you are a large company who has multiple locations or recruit nationwide. We'd really like and we'd really appreciate your help on the next steps we're going to take. That is something else just to emphasize as well, is the service is live, it's here, but the way that we work is that we always iterate. So in a couple of weeks, a month or so, there'll be some new features and then some new features. We're not just going to stand still and let this thing be live. We're always going to update it, and we have new features that are on the pipeline. So that's the demo. So I'll hand back to Nick.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks very much. And again, apologies for my internet dropping out. There's one question that I'd like to just go back on, Jane, if I could, with you about the REA thing. So this is where we're the recruit apprentice bit, sorry, where we're saying that we can advertise vacancies not just on Find an Apprenticeship, but by using an API, they can be advertised somewhere else. There's a question there that says, where do we go? Where does the provider or the employer go to get hold of that API?
Sorry, struggling to get off mute there. So, yeah, I do apologise. So within their employer account, they will be able to see, if they go to their home page, you'll be able to see under your apprenticeship adverts, at the bottom of that page, there is an area called Recruitment APIs. So it's on the right hand side of the employer account under your apprenticeship adverts. And if you go onto that link, it gives you all the information about how to use our recruitment APIs, how to give a developer a key, and more information on that. So it's within the account in the advert space.
Okay, cool, thank you. And then Chris, if I can come to you. So training provider questions saying, so they've noticed that there's less detail that seems to be required, and they say they have to contact people to ask for qualification details, etc. And they're also pointing out that no date of birth is required. Is this so that age is not discriminated against in the recruitment process?
So to answer the two questions, the qualification requirements shouldn't have changed between the two systems. So I'm not sure entirely what's going on there, and I can take that away. We just make it clearer now. Some people might not achieve a maths and English GCSE while at school. That is something that we've always built into the apprenticeship program, and you can do functional skills. You can take on an apprenticeship you can take on an apprentice who has no qualifications, and at certain levels of apprenticeships, there is provision, to use that word, to help someone achieve functional skills qualifications. So we've just made it clear because some people going to apprenticeships don't have qualifications. We just wanted to give them the ability to press no, so we're not asking for information they don't have, and that there's just a nicer experience for them to not be asked for things they haven't got. On the second half of the question, could you just repeat that for me, Nick, please?
Yes, so it's where are we? It's the bit that says also there's no date of birth. Is this so that age can't be discriminated against?
Yep, in short, yep. We have decided to just make sure that things like date of birth are more protected, more in line with other systems that handle candidate applications. Historically, in finding an apprenticeship, if you're an employer or a training provider, the date of birth doesn't show when you open a candidate in Recruit. So that's, we hopefully haven't changed it too much, but I'm seeing some questions about it, and we will take that away and have a discussion.
Okay, cool. There's a comment here that says that this employer is particularly interested in, once you've got an apprentice, how do you register that apprentice? How do you get them started? What I'll say to that is that in a couple of minutes I'll be sharing with you the details of our YouTube channel. And one of the channels on there is we've got a playlist for webinar recordings, and there's a great webinar recording for employers where we ran through all of the main journeys of the apprenticeship service, and there's a great section on there about how you add an apprentice. So go and have a look at that. And we're also updating a video as well, specifically about adding an apprentice. So that video will be on YouTube as well soon. So yeah, keep hanging on just for a second, and I'll share the link as to where you can go to get more details about the other apprenticeship service journeys that you might be able to follow. Okay, Chris, question about grades. So it says, why can't they add details after young people have got their grades, e.g. when they've left school? So I think it's more about the predicted grade route when they're adding details into find an apprenticeship.
Yeah, so we let GCSE and A-level students put in their predicted grades for applications, and that's just because specifically at this time of year, even people are looking for their September opportunities. They might be thinking about doing a degree apprenticeship which starts in September, so we just want to make it so they can apply, kind of like UCAS or a university admission service, where you can put in your predicted grades and you get an offer. We just want to kind of have that kind of experience for apprenticeship applications.
Cool. And while we're talking about grades, there's a question about qualifications obtained abroad. So what option should a candidate choose in that scenario?
There is a section called Other, where candidates can type in the name of the qualification that they've achieved. So I think that is new in the new service. I can't 100% recall how the old service handled international qualifications, but they can type in if it's an IB, or if they have an Abitur from Germany, they can type in what their qualification is, and it will appear in the application like it's that qualification.
So can I just confirm the IB, that's the International Baccalaureate? Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Jane, a question about can English and maths quals be mandatory to add in?
Hi, I think Chris really did cover that off, but no, we have changed it so that it's not mandatory to apply for to have English and maths to apply for an apprenticeship, because some apprenticeships do not require you to have English and maths to begin that apprenticeship, and so we've taken out that need for it for potential apprentices to say they have got qualifications.
Okay, cool, thank you. Chris, question for you. So this employer has their own questions that they've got on their company application form that they want to ask candidates to provide information on. So can they add their questions onto this site as well?
Yep. So those two questions I showed you, the one about skills and strengths and what interests you about an apprenticeship, those questions we will always ask. You can't remove those. Those are asked as a default question set on every application through Find an Apprenticeship. You can then add 2, 3, I can't recall exactly, some questions onto those, which the candidate will then be asked, and it will be mandatory for them to answer. So if you are okay with having the 2 questions that we wrote, you can use everything. If there's a question set that you only want to ask and you don't want our 2 questions, at the moment you'll have to use your own platform.
Thank you. And then there's quite a long question here, Chris. So how does the employer get notified? So when a candidate applies, how does the employer get notified? Will there be a CV attached? Can they download this and share that with department heads for that are involved in the selection process?
Yep. So it's all through your Apprenticeship Service account. So we don't. So yes, there's a couple bits to that question. So we don't ask for a CV. I'll start there. We don't ask for a CV because creating a CV is a long process. When we talk to students across England, students don't always have a CV. We think that the approach that we've done, where it's a series of questions and quite a quick form to fill out, hopefully replicates the information that you need for a CV, but doesn't require a student to sit down, or an apprentice or someone who's switching career to sit down for hours with a word processor worrying about fonts. We hope it gives you the same information in a way that is much easier and more supported for someone to create. How that then works is those, if you accept applications through Find an Apprenticeship, those then go into your Apprenticeship Service account. There's a separate screen that we haven't shown, but it's very easy to use, and there's a list of people who've applied. You click in, it plays back the application form, and then there's an interface where you can make them successful, unsuccessful. You can so it's all through your Apprenticeship Service account. To share those applications amongst your company, you can add people to the Apprenticeship Service account with a lower permission level so they can access the applications, and that's how we design the system to be used.
Cool, thank you. I'm going to ask one more question if I can. This one's for Jane. Again, quite a long question. So I've had an employer complain that once their advert's been uploaded, there's a document added. There's a phrase added that says the pay may be negotiated and may rise after a probation period has been successfully completed. That wasn't shown on the preview before the vacancy was submitted. So why has this been added, and what can we do if the employer doesn't want to add it onto their vacancy?
Thanks, Nick. I just want to reiterate that as it's a new service, there are some bugs in the system that are out there, and that is one of them. So we have currently, we work in fortnightly sprints because we're a digital design. So if people see things that aren't right on our service, they come into our backlog and they get prioritized, and then we do that work within a fortnight, and then it's released. It could be released quicker, it could be released within a week. So that question around the content that is being seen is being removed, and that will be released within the next fortnight. Hopefully, that's one of our bugs, and it's being addressed. So as I say, keep using the site and keep raising issues. And we will iterate and change the site for users. So all the feedback you can give us is really essential.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Jen. And we're expecting lots and lots of potential apprentices to be using the Find an Apprenticeship site, particularly this month, as I think next week users find out their A-level results, and the following week it's GCSE results. We know that we get a huge spike in interest in applications that are on Find an Apprenticeship. So if you've got vacancies that you're thinking about advertising now will be a great time to get those uploaded through your Apprenticeship Service account, so that people can view those applications and apply for them when they're considering their next steps after they've got their exam results. So if you've got vacancies on there, I would strongly urge you. Sorry, if you've got vacancies, I would strongly urge you to use the recruited apprentice function so that those potential apprentices can see your vacancies during their considerations of their next steps. Okay, cool. So thank you very much for the demo, Chris. Thank you for answering questions, everybody, and thank you everybody for submitting your questions. And so for those that we didn't cover, hopefully we've covered the main themes that you're all asking for without getting into the specific questions, but we will be sending those out to all of our user researchers and the dev teams so that they can hear and listen to all of your thoughts about the service, so they can build that into sort of future iterations about how they develop the service. So for me, as I mentioned previously, I just want to take just a couple of minutes just to go through next steps. So the first part is about our YouTube channel. So that's at DFE Sector Comms. You'll see on there that we've got 3 playlists on that channel, and the recording of today's sessions will be in the webinar recordings playlist in about a week's time. And that's the place where I said you can go to get access to the webinar that we ran recently, which demoed all of the different key journeys through the Apprenticeship Service. So it shows you how to use the Apprenticeship Service to add an apprentice and things like that. So please go and have a look at those. A couple of other playlists that we've got as well. So all of our support videos covering the different functions of the Apprenticeship Service are on the Using the Apprenticeship Service playlist, and videos created to support the delivery of apprenticeships are available in the Apprenticeships Support video playlist. So please do visit that site, go onto that channel and click on the bell icon to get alerts when new content is uploaded. And then on this slide, I've got a few places for you to go to access further support. So as we mentioned beforehand, there's a handout. So if you go on your control panel to the handout tab, if you click that, you'll be able to download a PDF document with all the main links for you there. So just to go through these, so other ways to stay up to date are apprenticeships.gov.uk. It's got great information about the apprenticeship service and apprenticeships in general for employers and providers. So go and have a look at that. For our training provider colleagues, I always mention the Further Education Training Providers community, and that's a peer-led discussion forum for training providers where providers help each other with queries about the apprenticeship service. To register for any of our future webinars, I've included a link that you should follow on the screen, and by the end of this week we'll have a recording of today's webinar available on that link as well, and that will be available for about a month or so. And that just gives us a little bit of time whilst we do a little bit of editing before we publish the result, before we publish the recording on our YouTube channel as well. And then finally, if you've got any specific queries about the apprenticeship service, you can always use the self-service support tool, or you can email the support team as well, and their details are on the slide and the handout. So that's it. That brings us to the end of our session today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all of my presenters for the demos and the insights and the questions. And remember, please, as you leave the webinar, if you wouldn't mind completing the short survey, tell us what you think as you leave the session. That'd be great. So bye, everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.